Good evening and welcome to the Dollar Dogs and Beer podcast. I am your host, Andrew, and for the first time in what feels like half a year almost, all three of us are back together. Nobody is on vacation, nobody has prior obligations tonight, and nobody is pissed off at the results of the previous round of the playoff series. Although that wouldn't have stopped the episode. Literally, I will promise it was not because I was so mad about the Braves-Phillies. It was literally we could not get schedules lined up anywhere in between rounds. I did have a fun time, though, with Ron before the World Series started. So at least we got one in before the World Series actually happened. So I feel like I haven't seen you guys in ages. So, Jason, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Headed into the offseason here. We have some awards starting to trickle in. We're winding down with our season, boys.
It's been a good one, honestly. I thought that at least for the show's aspect. I mean, maybe not the end result any of us were either expecting or hoping for, but still a great season nevertheless. Joe, You just got back from vacation. Welcome back.
It's good to be back, man. Good to be back.
Going from what, 80s and sunny to freaking cold every morning?
Yep, that's okay though.
Yeah.
Going from drunk to being sober.
Oh, that's what we have to show, dude. I will say this though. At least it finally feels like fall, other than the fact that it hasn't rained in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, in which case it feels like April again. All right. So, Joe, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking an ice cold Pepsi. My nice Cubs glass. Two reasons, obviously. Number one, I'm trying to stay a little level-headed, more level-headed than I was last week when the news dropped about the new manager. And the obviously red, white, and blue for the Cubs, and red, white, and blue as a tap to our veterans. So,
love it. All right, and Jason, what about you?
Tonight, I'm going with one of my favorites, and it's something that all of you have currently as well, but some Cheerwine Ale. Still one of my favorites.
Yeah, about that. Ours is long gone, dude. But it was delicious, and my wife was very, very thankful for it, too. That she was able to enjoy a couple cans for herself. I split the 4-pack with her. For me tonight,
that's awesome. Went with Joe. Were you able to try it yet?
Yeah,
Joe, were you able to try it yet?
I finished it. It was
nice.
Good.
What'd you think? Good.
Interesting. You guys know I don't drink a ton of beer, so it was an interesting combination of flavors.
Yeah.
It's one of the best of any of these hard insert soda, spiked insert soda. I think it does a better job of staying true to the original flavor of the original drink than all the other ones do. That's maybe not necessarily more than an Arnold Palmer, but other than that, I think it's way better than, especially like I tried the spiked Mountain Dew one time. My God, that tasted awful. So yeah, props to Cheerwine Ale for a delicious ale. Now bring it up here, distribute it up here, so we don't have to rely on Jason going down to Virginia to get it all the time. Just saying,
right? And actually, that North Carolina. It wasn't even available in Virginia where we were.
That's right. You had to go all the way down and see. I forgot about
that. Another state south. But it's worth it. Absolutely worth it.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. No doubt. All right. So for me tonight, I went a little south of Pennsylvania for my beer. I went to Duclaw Brewing out of Maryland because congratulations, Gunnar Henderson. I decided to go with a Maryland brew tonight from Duclaw. The Sour Me, oh yeah, is a fruit punch sour ale. This will be really good in the middle of the summer. It's a little odd to have now because I'm normally in a very heavy stout mode, but I also am one of those people who is on the I do not want my Christmas decorations put up before Thanksgiving. So I felt like if I got a holiday ale, I am going to hear about it, and then all the Christmas stuff will be up before Thanksgiving. So, I had to do it. All right, let's roll into it, guys. So we'll start, obviously, the World Series. The Rangers took down the Diamondbacks. It was the first title in history for the Rangers. It was a 4-1 series win. Pretty dominant overall for the Rangers. The Diamondbacks had a big game in Game 2, the one game they won 9-1, but otherwise 6-5 3-1, 11-7, 5-0. The Rangers, honestly, guys, we were thinking they led the West basically all year until the last day when it just collapsed and fell to the Astros. And honestly, from their performance throughout the postseason, they reminded us that they were the division leaders for most of the season. In the clincher, Zach Gallen, he did everything he could to try and force Game 6. He had a no-hitter going through 6 innings, carried it into the 7th before Corey Seager hit a little squibber through the left side to break it up. And Corey Seager did end up winning the MVP award for the World Series this year. Absolutely the right choice, in my opinion. 318, 451, 682 slash line, a double, 3 homers, 6 RBIs, 6 runs scored, 3 walks to 5 strikeouts. Interestingly, Seager, he has also previously won a World Series MVP back in 2020 with the Dodgers. So he joined set of Hall of Famers for multiple World Series MVP awards of Sandy Koufax, Bob Gibson, Reggie Jackson. That is not bad company to be brought up with at all. Texas manager Bruce Bochy, this is his 4th title, 13 years after his first one when the Giants beat the Rangers back in 2010. And remember, that was back when the Giants were literally winning it every other year, 10, 12, and 14. And I believe, if I remember right, it was actually 13 years to the day of the clinching of that first one. So pretty cool for Bochy. He's the 6th manager to have 4 titles, joining the Professor Casey Stengel, Joe McCarthy, Connie Mack, Walter Alston, Joe Torre. And remember, all these guys also Hall of Famers. Guys, I think it's pretty safe to say Bochy, his ticket has long been punched, but this should be the final nail in the coffin. He will be in Cooperstown at some point when he retires long enough to be eligible.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He was a legend and already going to be in before this series. So that just absolutely cements it.
Yeah. The Rangers pitching, guys, throughout the entire postseason, really, really strong, particularly Nathan Eovaldi, who got pressed back into the A's duties when Jacob deGrom went down. This was Eovaldi's line for the postseason, guys, 5-0 and a 2.95 ERA. That's getting it done. Just a phenomenal performance by Eovaldi. And let's look at Chris Young, the GM of Texas. The turnaround that he worked to build, just absolutely out of this world. They lost 102 games in 2021. Last year, they lost 94 games. And then this year, he finally felt like he had the talent there that he could push for key deals at the deadline and a little bit before, because remember, the Aroldis Chapman deal happened back in May, if I remember right, May or June. But he also grabbed Jordan Montgomery, and those guys were absolutely key down the stretch. I mean, we always like to look at the trade deadline and think winners and losers, and then you look back on it later and was like, well, that was actually not a great deal. And that was actually a surprisingly great deal. This looked great at the time, and after the fact still continues to look great. They became the first team to win the World Series without committing an error since the 1966 Baltimore Orioles. They are the first team in baseball to ever win 13 postseason games, the first club of any of the 4 major professional sports to win 11 road games in a single postseason. I mean, the road prowess by this Rangers team this year, holy crap. I don't think that's a record you're ever going to see broken. Maybe tied, but never broken. And remember, the ALCS victory over the Astros, the home team did not win a game in that entire series. That was all road wins, which is wild to me.
Yeah, that was absolutely mind-blowing, especially because up until the 2019 World Series with the Nationals and the Astros, we hadn't seen something like that happen. Mm-hmm. And in that World Series, the road team won every single game. So the fact that it happened twice in such a close span is incredible.
Yeah, unheard of even. So now, guys, we are down to 5 franchises left who have not yet crested the mountain to grab a World Series title. That would be the Rockies, the Brewers, which, remember, the city of Milwaukee does have one, but it was the Braves who got it, not the Brewers. The Padres, the Mariners, and the Rays. And remember, with the Rays and the Rockies being expansion teams, that's not as big of a surprise, although Arizona winning it very quickly after becoming an expansion team and one of the greatest World Series I think I've ever watched.
Same with the Marlins. Marlins also won it They want it within 4 years.
Right. So, you've got some teams that get it quick, and some teams it's just taking them a little bit longer than others. So, a lot of good in this World Series, but there's also a little bad to talk about here. This was the worst rated Fall Classic and least watched in the history of the World Series and TV. Looking at Nielsen ratings, Game 2 and 3 were the least watched on record, with an average of only 8.15 million viewers and 8.13 million in games 2 and 3. The previous least watched game was Game 3 of the 2020 World Series between the Dodgers and Rays, and that was 8.34 million. Game 1 was the least watched World Series opener ever recorded, 9.172 million viewers. Last year, Game 6, when the Astros eliminated the Phillies, that was the fewest viewers all time for a Game 6. Take that with a grain of salt, because you don't always get Game 6 that often, of course. But even still, that game last year, 6.11 rating and 12.5 million viewers. That was more viewers in that one game than any individual game in this World Series. I mean, it's what's going to happen when you have two wildcard teams that are going to make it, and one of those wildcard teams being in the 80-win tier. I mean, it was great to see new teams that you haven't seen in there, but at the same time, it seems like baseball fans don't really like seeing new teams in there. They did not show up to watch many games. I didn't watch every single game, but I did watch throughout the series. It was a well-played series. I actually enjoyed what I did watch, and I know one thing Rob Manfred will quickly point out is that this World Series, they were competing with football over at least two of the games. I understand that. But let's roll it back to if we roll it back to the 95 World Series when Atlanta beat Cleveland. That World Series had at least two, maybe three games that overlap with the NFL, and that averaged a 19.5 rating and 28.97 million viewers. And that was the year after the strike, when baseball fans said, we're probably not going to come back. Well, that clearly wasn't true, because the fans did come back to watch the World Series. They didn't care that the NFL was on. And I know the NFL wasn't the juggernaut then that it is now. I do understand it. It's a little bit of an apples to oranges comparison. But, this is highlighting an ongoing issue with the World Series. This is the crown jewel of the season, and ratings just have not been great the last couple of years. And I know from COVID on, it hasn't been great. That was a 5.2 average for the rating for the COVID year, 6.5 when Atlanta won, 6.1 last year. Those were the averages. And before that, it was in the 8s or higher. So baseball has not regained the traction from COVID, and they need to figure out why, because as Joe has pointed out many times when we've had these special games, whether it's Field of Dreams, the Little League game, whatever, baseball does a great job with those special one-off games. Why can they not do that with the World Series? Is it the broadcasting crew people don't like? Was it just because it was a matchup that didn't have a lot of interest nationally? Do you guys have any thoughts for why it might have been so bad this year?
I mean, I think, you mentioned something about wild card teams. That's not necessarily a big deciding factor, but most of the people on these two teams, the average person doesn't know half the players. We do, because we're junkies, but the average fan doesn't know half of these players. In this kind of scenario, it's not a huge market. I mean, the Texas one is, but it's huge in the Southwest. But beyond that, it's hard to get regional interest when it's like that, which is nobody's fault, I think. But you made a point that the NFL is a juggernaut, and you're just not going to compete with it most of the time. And if you're starting games at 8:00 on a Sunday night, and I have the choice between you and Eagles Chiefs, for example, I'm probably watching Eagles Chiefs if my team's not in the World Series.
Yeah.
There wasn't a ton of star power here. You talked about the post strike year with the Indians and the Braves. You had Kenny Lofton, you had Albert Bell, you had Jim Thome, and that's just on one side of that series. So I think that you can't underestimate the star power level that doesn't exist in the major leagues, I think.
Yeah,
that's a good one too.
And even like you look at a couple of the stars that even the Rangers have, the pitchers, DeGrom wasn't in there. Scherzer left early. Like, not only was a star power there, but I think the two teams that were in there absolutely contributed to this because they're not. I would argue that the Rangers are not a big market team. The team out of Texas is the Houston Astros. And you also have to take a look at the proximity. You're talking Arizona and Texas. You have 0 East Coast teams. Based off of the region, you're only going to get a lot of people from that specific area because it's not like you have a New York team in it or like Atlanta, Philly, like Boston. You're not getting those supermarkets, super like areas. So I think that definitely had an effect, and honestly, like I was still absolutely salty about it to the point that I didn't watch it until probably 6th or 7th inning of Game 6, just because I like whenever a team is about to win it, I do like seeing how they celebrate it, unless it's a team that I absolutely can't stand, a la Braves, Astros last year. Like I refuse to watch the Astros win it. Like I didn't watch the final outs because I'm like, you know what? I don't want to watch them celebrate. So, yeah, I don't think that this World Series was a matchup that people wanted. That said, congrats to the Rangers. I'm glad that they finally won their title, get off of that 0 World Series titles list. And honestly, seeing how they play throughout the postseason, not losing a road game, I don't think anybody was going to beat them. Like just watching the end of Game 6 and seeing some of the stats, I was like, even if it was the Phillies over the Diamondbacks, I don't know that. I still don't think that the Phillies would have ended up winning that one. So it spared me the heartbreak of 2 straight World Series losses, like the Rangers experienced in 2010 and 11.
Yeah, that's really fair too, Jason. To be honest, I don't know that many of the NL teams were going to knock off Houston, knock off Texas when they're not losing on the road. I mean, that's insane. You don't see that. There's a reason it hadn't been done before this year.
And that Seager game tying home run in Game 1 completely changed the course of that series.
Yeah, completely.
It absolutely changed the way that series was going to go.
The man earned that MVP. He was without a doubt the most
valuable
player on the field, hands down. Sometimes there is a good debate that can be had for maybe even the best player in the losing team and maybe another player on the winning team. This year, there was absolutely no debate this year.
I think if he doesn't get hurt, there's potential for Adolis Garcia to be in the conversation, but that's just in the conversation. I still don't think he would have won it. I think it was absolutely Seager's 100%. Yeah. But if Garcia stays healthy, depending on what he does, he's in the conversation.
Sure. All right. So, yeah, that's it for the World Series. That is that hit, and then we rolled into free agency 4 days later. But before we get all the way over to that, I got to give some thoughts with Ron a couple weeks ago. You guys haven't been on since before the playoffs started, so Jason, I'll let you spout off in a minute. Let Joe go ahead first on this one to let somebody who was purely looking from the outside in. Joe, what were your thoughts on either the World Series or the playoffs in general? Whether it was the formatting, the overall matchups, how MLB was trying to stagger the schedule around, what were your thoughts overall for the playoffs?
I mean, I think there's a ton to be said for baseball is completely different from most other sports, right? We obviously know that, but bye weeks are a detriment. Having an entire week off is a dumb thing. It just is. You want to have that first round in 3 straight days, fine, but you have to only have one day off between that and the next series because this is just ridiculous. The week off is not beneficial. I don't know if it's get rid of a wild card team again or if it's, some other structure has to happen here because this is just not it's not beneficial. I mean, the best teams didn't make it to the end. Not that they have to. Obviously, it doesn't always go that way, but you're starting behind the 8 ball when hitters need rhythm and they get a whole week off. That part just of this situation just doesn't make sense to me. That's number one. Number two is that I think you really saw that pitching really dominated that first round of things, and I think that was huge. Obviously, I think getting some new teams from a pure baseball fan perspective was nice to see in the World Series itself. I when we had our playoff prediction show, I said the Diamondbacks would represent the NL. I don't know if that was just dumb luck or what it was, but I thought that was the right choice there. I thought, Andrew, I really thought that Atlanta was going to have trouble with that, having Max Fried down for that first series. There were too many things that just didn't go right for Atlanta, I thought. And enough things went wrong for Philly after Atlanta that it just wasn't there. And just, things happen. But I think, on the AL side, Houston, finally got taken down, which was nice. I mean, they've been in 7 ALCSs in a row, which is ridiculous. But
only one ring, which got tainted by a trash. Well, okay, 2 rings now. One of which was tainted by a trash can.
The whole point is that you're getting there, and they have this continuity there. They've continued that continuity with their manager hire, which I know we'll talk about. They're always going to be there. They just are. I think, again, bottom line with the playoffs, I think the week off sucks. I think we got the matchup some people expected to get maybe from a market standpoint. And I think also it's just I don't know what they need to do as far as the World Series, if it needs to be a little bit of an earlier game so it's not competing with football in some way. I don't know if that's going to help. But in general, I didn't watch a ton of the playoffs. I just kind of kept track of scores and things like that. And of course, the back and forth between you two there for a while.
What back and forth? We were radio silent in the chat throughout that entire series.
We had to be because it like that. That's why
it was going to be like throwing two tomcats in a burlap sack.
I'm one of those where it's like I was gonna let Andrew say whatever he wanted, and I was never going to reply because the moment I do, something changes the momentum, and then it will be thrown back to me. Like I had like a guy that I bowl with on Wednesday nights. It was for game 3. I came into bowling alley, and mind you, so this is right after game 2 when the Braves came back in the 8th inning and ended up winning that game. He came into the bowling center and just started doing the tomahawk chop to me. And
dumbass.
I didn't say a single word.
So
I'm like, I'm just going to just bide my time because I need to see what happens with this series. And that game went on, and you had Attaboy Harper with his 2 home runs, and it
Can't wait to
dominated.
see Harper get beamed next year.
I just kind of looked at him, smiled. That was it. And I had to wait until the next week because just needed to see the Phils win first. Because I'm like, I'm not gonna retaliate or say something because I know that if the Braves came back to win, I was gonna hear it even worse. So
yeah, should we talk about that series? Should we?
No, I think we've.
Well, I mean, to be fair, if you're gonna get to me and my recap. So
no, that's why I'm saying. Do you want to start your recap and do Braves Phillies, and do you want me to go after you, or do you want to go ahead? What do you want to do?
I don't know. Let's let Joe finish first. See if I don't know if Joe's done with his thoughts on the playoffs or not. But
look, I mean, the only thing that we all knew for sure was that Milwaukee was going to lose in the first round, and congratulations, Milwaukee.
That's the easiest prediction to make every year. Let's be real.
Yeah.
For now.
So I'll touch on a couple things that Joe mentioned before I go into like my overall thoughts. Because I guess it kind of relays into that. Now, granted, the extra wild card and the week delay has benefited my team over the last 2 years. But I don't mind the extra week off. As a Phillies fan, I would love for the Phillies to have off that week, I think, because you need to think about how much strain is on those players' bodies over the course of 162 games. It's not the other team's fault if you're not fully prepared for the series. So I'm even thinking, let's take the Braves Philly series. You know, the Braves had that layoff. They still got to train. They still did simulated games. Now I know that they are not the exact same thing. I get that. Absolutely, I get that. But you look at that. The Braves took 1 out of 2 at home. They had 1 day off between game 2 and game 3, and they got smacked in the mouth 10-2.
No.
Wait. Let me finish my thought.
There was too much off days in that series. Game 1, day off. Game 2, day off for travel. That was insane. And I know they did it to stagger the NLDS and the ALDS, so there's baseball on TV every day. But that was nuts.
But see that also kind of adds to my point though. No,
I know. So, I'm just saying we're going to talk about all these days off, and I feel like our teams had more days off in October than they did in several months throughout this past season. It's not good.
Yeah, and I think isn't it kind of alternating each year now? Like last year, the American League teams had the day off in between those couple games. I would need to look at the schedule, but I thought it kind of swapped.
A weird schedule last year. We had a weird broken up schedule last year too, I thought.
I'm pretty sure we were. I think that the games 1 and 2 were back-to-back days. It's just the timing of them was terrible because they were all afternoon games. That's right,
because we got all the 1 o'clock games.
Right. But my thing here is so you have all that time off. Game 1, I can understand, being rusty, things like that. You're getting back into the flow of regular gameplay. But then you have that 1 day off, and you come out in game 2, and you come back in the 8th inning, you take a lead, you hold on to win that game. You have all of the momentum. 1 day off, if you're saying that 10 days off and then you're not ready for that, but game 3 was only 1 game difference, and the Braves still got their asses absolutely handed to them in that game. So,
I have
to
a
me, like,
lot of issues with Game 3, but it wasn't. Brian Snitker got badly outmanaged in that series with how he handled the pitching staff,
right.
and how he handled
So
the lineup
that's
in Game 1.
which that to me means that's not the layoff that's causing these issues. It's the managers not managing their teams properly.
Well, the layoff affected our hitters. The problem is Snitker let the Braves be dug in too deep of a hole because he didn't have a quick hook for Elder. Like the moment the Phillies started to peg Elder, he should have been gone. This isn't the right, like in 2021, Snitker did a great job with quick hooks, pulling pitchers out, not trying to, because it's the playoffs. It's not like the regular season where you let them try and figure it out for the inning and maybe let them go on because it's a long season. You don't have that time in the playoffs. And he did that throughout the NLDS, the Phillies. It drove me nuts. And Ron can attest to this because he and I were both questioning what the hell was going on both sides, actually, with some of the pitching decisions. But yeah, anyway, go ahead.
But yeah, so like I don't think that the layoff is what hurt the Braves in that series. I think it was managerial decisions. And honestly, I think that overall the Phillies pitching staff was better. You give them Game 2, where the bullpen fell apart, but for the most part, the Phillies pitching staff outpitched the Braves pitching staff. I think looking at that series, I know whenever you and I talk about a playoff series before they actually play it, we've done this the last 2 years. I know I've ended both times chatting with you saying, may the team that plays best win, not may the best team win, because best team means shit. It's may the best. So I play may the team. I say may the team that plays best win. And for the second straight year, the Phillies played better than the Braves in that series.
One thing I pointed out with Ron, I don't remember if we said this on the show last 2 weeks ago, or if we were talking about it in our private chat. The playoffs exemplify hot and cold streaks to an extreme that you don't see any other time of the year. Like if we replayed the Braves and Phillies series 100 times, it's probably going to be close to a 50-50 split, maybe like a 55-45, sure. probably skewed towards Atlanta just because of the depth of the team. But realistically, it's going to be damn close to a 50-50 split. And those hot and cold streaks, you never saw it exemplified as much as Braves Phillies, and then in the next series, Phillies Diamondbacks, when everything that went right for you against Atlanta flipped around and went completely wrong against Arizona. That's just one thing that's the playoffs. You love it and you hate it.
Yeah, and I think so this kind of works for both series here. And then like the last thing I'll touch on will be the wild card series, because that was the one that I actually was at Game 1, and I didn't get a chance to really talk about that one. But so the NLCS, the problem there, one, the hitters went frigid at the worst possible time. Your top 4 players, top 4 or 5 batters, sitting like 3 for 20 or something like that, something ridiculous. That's never going to get it done. You have,
I saw that.
And you have a big difference here was transitioning from 2 fairly hitter-friendly parks to a hitter-friendly park and a pitcher-friendly park. Mm-hmm. The Phillies in their home games did what they should have done, except for Game 6 and 7, which that was just unbelievably bad. But anyway, when the momentum shifted when they went out to Arizona, up 2-0. First of all, they became the favorites for the World Series title, which I saw that and I was immediately like, well, there goes that, because this team likes to be seen as an underdog. They like the idea of upsetting people. Like, look at last year, 2022. They loved being the last team in and just, you know what? Let's just run the table. Let's do what we can. And this year, I think there were more expectations, especially once they made it to the NLCS, that they would be the ones representing the NL again. And I know I said this in our chat before that series, that the Diamondbacks scared me because they reminded me of the 2022 Phillies. Last team in, already upset two teams. They're playing with house money. They have nothing to lose. And you could see it in the play. They were loose. They were just having more fun. Whereas the Phillies, especially once the series got tied up at 2, they started stressing. They started pushing and pressing more. And then it worked in game 3. Like, they got to was it Zach Gallen? Yeah, they got to Zach Gallen both times. No. Who was it? Was it? It was Gallen or Kelly?
Merrill Kelly, I think.
It was Merrill Kelly.
Okay, so they rocked Merrill Kelly each time, but then they just could not figure out a rookie. And when they lost Game 6, I was definitely afraid about Game 7 because all the pressure was on them, and they had to play stressed baseball. Whereas the Diamondbacks were like, cool, we made it to 7. We took a game in Philly, which is something that no team has done yet this postseason. Why the hell not? Let's win a second.
The Diamondbacks were retired John Daly out on the golf course, chugging Miller Lite and smoking 2 packs of cigarettes.
Yeah. So it's one of those. I was absolutely disappointed, as I know you know. But honestly, the reason that I was most upset was because I had World Series tickets. Like, if I didn't have the tickets, I wouldn't have been nearly as pissed off as I was. Because the Diamondbacks just flat out dominated the second half of that series. You come back home 3-2, knowing you have to win 1 out of 2 at home. I would have taken those odds every time, but it just didn't work out. But honestly, it was still a great run for the Phils. I think there's the issues to me. The big thing was Rob Thompson continuing to go back to Craig Kimbrell.
Yeah, that made no sense to me. I was watching that NLCS and I could not understand why he kept going back to Kimbrell.
Game 3 is not the one that annoys me because, it's a tie game. It's very possible that a closer is going to give up a run here or there. I don't want to say I don't mind it, but that one does not bother me as much as game 4 does, because game 4, after that night before, he's struggling. You see that he struggled throughout the postseason. There was no reason to bring him in when he was brought in. The moment he was brought in, I said, this game's tied, at least.
Go back to the Atlanta series. He got the job done, but every ball Atlanta hit, they hit hard.
It was hard.
It just went right to an outfielder, so it didn't look bad on the stat sheet. But Atlanta had no problem seeing any of Kimbrell's pitching and teeing up on him.
Yeah, so Craig Kimbrell will forever be on my shit list now, but and he will forever be dead to me.
I've got to ask the Joe question here: is Kimbrell worse than your buddy David Robertson?
No, because he at least got some saves and played the season. David Robertson just stole money without playing. So, well, actually, it's possible that Robertson went up on my list since the Phillies teed off of him in the wild card round.
There it is.
But no, like, and the other thing here with between the Braves series and the Diamondback series in the NLCS, players need to learn. You do not say a single thing about the other team to give them fire. It happened in Atlanta with Arcia and Attaboy Harper, and it happened again with Garrett Stubbs saying that they know where the pool is at Chase. Is it still Chase? Is it Chase Field or is it something different? People's Bank Field or whatever.
I can't remember what it is.
Whatever. I'm still good. I still want to call it the Bob, like Bank One Ballpark. But like, you don't say anything to give the other team fire. And I know you're going to come back to Arcia being like, it was in the locker room.
Yes, You brought it up, so yes, I am going to respond to it.
I was going to say, but I know you're going to respond, as you should. But the thing is, there's reporters in the locker room. You can't expect to say something and think, oh no, this is off the record. No, like, if you're saying something in the locker room with reporters there, don't be surprised when it gets out.
No, because the locker room is not. If the players are not actually being interviewed, that is where they are supposed to be allowed to say whatever the hell they want. It was an emotional come from behind victory. Arcia is allowed to say what he, and let me put this specifically with Arcia. Arcia being a Spanish primary speaking person, when he is interviewing, he will never conduct an interview. He will never give a quote unless he has an interpreter present with him. And this reporter from Philadelphia just pulls that out of the air. It pisses me off to no end. Kevin Gossman, quote, "It's supposed to be a sanctuary for players. What happens in the clubhouse stays in the clubhouse."
No, it doesn't.
It's not supposed to be a free-for-all for reporters to just go and grab random quotes being yelled out across the locker room as a team is celebrating a victory. It's not. And they know that. There's supposed to be a thing such as journalistic integrity, which apparently some Philadelphia reporters don't have, although it doesn't shock me.
I'm going to let Joe answer that one.
I don't know where to start, man. I'm just watching the fire out of your ears here, both of you.
Like,
look, I mean, you could put it on people and say, well, don't put this bulletin board material out there. All Garrett Stubbs has to do is back it up, and this is not a story for Philadelphia. First off. Second off, same thing with Arcia. All Arcia has to do is back it up, and it ain't a fucking story.
Exactly. That's what drove me nuts about the Garrett Stubbs one, was because, he didn't back it up, and he didn't come out and say, yeah, I said it, I believe we're going to win. All Arcia had to do was own it. And I'm thinking all the way back to Alec Boehm with the I effing hate this place. He came out, he owned it, and things moved on. He turned back on this. And honestly, like, what are your thoughts on the Donald and his comments? That was locker room talk. Should that not have made it out into the public? Like, whatever you say in the locker room, if there are reporters present, you have to expect that they will be putting something out there. Like, it's a sanctuary, but if you want it to be your sanctuary where you can say anything and everything without repercussion, then you need to kick the reporters out.
For one, I'm surprised they were let in that early. That did surprise me. For two, though, you say Arcia should have backed it up. Here's part of the problem, or should have owned up to it. Here's part of the problem. Atlanta under Snitker has become basically the model of a professional organization outside of a couple of players that like to shoot their mouths off. I'm thinking of Jock Peterson in particular with "We Are Those Motherfuckers." Outside of that, Atlanta doesn't really have guys that will get down and dirty like that. They don't, and that probably was to their detriment in that series that you didn't have a guy that would be willing to get up in Harper's face and jaw with him.
Yeah, and
would it have
helped?
Who knows? But would it have made Harper more pissed off? Very likely. Would have made Harper cool off faster against the Diamondbacks? Also a possibility.
Yeah. So I mean, like, all that to say, attaboy Harper. Moving on, kind of moving backwards. So the wild card game that I was at, first off, that was just an absolutely incredible experience. It was my first time seeing a playoff game in person in Philly. The atmosphere lived up to the hype and then some. I was saying that I was up and down more than I am when I go to church. Like, anytime there were 2 strikes on the batter, you're up and you're waving your rally towel. Anytime something good offensively happens, you're up and you're waving your rally towel. Even like, say it's like 3-2 and a batter keeps fouling off pitches, you're up and you're waving your rally towel. Like, it was so cool. And it was nice seeing the Phillies actually beat the Marlins. I was very happy to see them beat the Marlins 2-0 in that series. And I was able to take my mom to it. Karen had a work thing, so she wasn't able to go. So I took my mom, who is a big Phillies fan. She had never been to a game before either. And she and my dad took me to so many games as a kid that it was cool to kind of take her to her first playoff game. We got a picture after the game with the scoreboard, and it was just neat seeing everything, seeing the player introductions, all the fireworks around the stadium. And it's tough to think about now, knowing what the future was going to hold. It was Rhys Hoskins' last appearance in Philadelphia. He threw out the first pitch that night. And they played his intro music. They played his intro graphic on the screen and everything. And the crowd just went insane for him. So it was really cool.
Did he throw a strike?
I don't know. There were so many rally towels going around that it was hard to see. But no, it was just a really cool experience. And reflecting on my first season as a pass holder, as a season ticket holder, it was such a fun season. Absolutely incredible. Can't wait for next year.
Yeah, now just for people who don't know, because you purchased World Series tickets and they didn't make it, did they roll that into your season tickets next year?
Yeah. So basically, what they did was they did give me the option of either getting a refund to my original payment method, or if I just did nothing, they would roll it into my season plan, what I owe for next year. Because the nice thing, most teams, pretty sure all teams do this, but they give you a payment plan option. It's like 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, etc. And so because I had those tickets and they didn't play the game, I chose the option of just rolling them into what I owe remaining on the plan. So I think I think it comes out on like the 15th of this month. So after Wednesday, I'm pretty sure my tickets are already paid for next year. So yeah, it all works out in the end. I would have much rather gotten to use those tickets.
Oh, absolutely.
But it does work. It does all work out in the end.
That's good to know. Just, for anybody listening, it sounds like if that's a pretty well industry-wide standard.
Yeah.
If you were ever thinking, I want to be a season tickets holder, but I'm not sure, is it if I am a season ticket holder, is it worth buying for the next round before they're going to be there? It sounds like if your team does anything like what the Phillies did with Jason, it's absolutely worth it. You've got the money and you don't need the refund money right back. Roll it right in. That's a great option.
Yeah, and the cool thing about the season ticket plan, and that's actually the main reason, one of the main reasons I wanted to do the season ticket plan. One, it was been a bucket list of mine to have season tickets to the Phillies. But 2, season ticket holders get first option to every single playoff series. What they do is they give you 1 game per series, and they tell you which home game it's going to be. So at one time, you can get all 4 series. Excuse me. And then whichever tickets don't get used, that's what goes in with your refund. So, like, say the Phillies lost to the Marlins, I would have had all the other series refunded. So it's definitely worth it. You don't lose out on money. Absolutely not. And you get the tickets for reasonable prices. You get them for
market.
Yeah. They're maybe just a little higher than normal, like maybe like $20, $30. But considering the resale sites,
I was about to say I was looking at Ticketmaster just out of curiosity, and I was like, this is nuts.
I did end up selling my NLDS tickets, which were it was the clinching. It ended up being the clinching game against the Braves, and the resale prices were absolutely insane. Like I ended up making just about all of my playoff money back.
Dang.
Yeah.
I was looking the other night at, I was looking at what day the World Series, the Super Bowl is being played, because I wasn't sure what day in February it was. And tickets right now, the cheapest tickets you can get without knowing any teams that will be in the playoffs are $7,600 already. So, yeah, the aftermarket is insane. Go with the season ticket option. Sounds like that is the better plan.
Yep, get yourself in there.
Just my quick hits. I completely agree with Joe. There's too many off days. Baseball is a momentum game. And actually, to be honest, guys, we saw this with a lot of teams even coming out of the All-Star break, and that's only a 4-day break, that would come out and be flat for a couple days before their hitters could get back in rhythm again. And that affects the hitters way more than the pitchers. The pitchers love the rest. Pitchers are never upset to have extra rest. Hitters, they want to hit every damn day. So, why is there an off day after the regular season? Why is there an off day after the wild card round? Compress that. Just get rid of both off days. You're going to know most of the time, you're going to know that where you're going to be going. So you send your guys up ahead. We've seen teams do that before, especially the big series, even in the regular season. I know not this year, but last year, before Atlanta played the Mets in the clinching series that took the division title away from the Mets, we sent two of our starters that weren't going to be used in the previous series. We sent them ahead to either Atlanta or New York. I don't remember which series it was, so that they would be there, well rested and ready to go when the rest of the team rolled in. It's not that hard to do. It's just not. And they need to figure out how it's okay to not have baseball on every single night throughout October. It really is, to not have these weird off days, which again, I don't want to blame the off days for the Braves losing. I want to more blame the fact that I do think Snit got outmanaged a lot. But at the same time, the off days didn't help. Those sim games are not the same. Sim games and inter-squad games are never going to match what you're going to face in the next series. It's not like the NFL when you run your practice squad out against the first team and you have guys that are designated to act like certain players on the other team. Like when you use a running back to imitate a nasty dual threat quarterback, so you can train a linebacker how to spy on a guy that's going to zip and dodge this way and that way. You're not, they need to figure that out. And once
the thing is, the thing is, you need to remember that the Phillies didn't get to set up their rotation. Your number one starter, your ace, Spencer Strider, lost not once but twice to number 3 starter Ranger Suarez.
Strider's technically 2, dude. We went 2-1, but it doesn't matter.
He's your ace. He's absolutely your ace.
I would argue Max Fried because of the success Max Fried has had in the World Series and beyond. Personally, but anyway, and keep in mind, Fried was getting over a blister. I mean, this is the second year in a row Fried has been dealing with an injury towards the end of the year that definitely affected him in the playoffs. And not having Morton in the NLDS did not help either. But whatever. Yeah. But yeah, the MLB needs to figure out something with the schedule. I don't remember which pundit said it, but why not have the division winners play in the wild card round and start the round up 1-0? It's not a bad solution. The expanded wild card definitely made the end of the regular season more interesting because there were compelling races all the way down to the last day. I won't deny that. But they need to figure something out with this first round. And I don't want to add another team. I really don't want to add another team. But if it means adding another wild card team to make sure everybody is playing right away, then just do it.
The main thing I would like to see is reseeding. That's the main thing that I would like to see would be some kind of a reseed.
Yeah, because let's be real, Braves Philly should have been the NLCS. That shouldn't have been a DS matchup. That should have been the NLCS. And that would be a good way to reward the top seeds so that they still have the matchup against the lowest remaining seed, which is how it should. That's how it should always be. I don't care if the NBA did it first, and the NBA did it so successfully. The NFL, when they last did their collective bargaining, was like, this is a great idea. It was one of the few things the owners and players agreed on quickly. I think it was actually probably the only point that the owners and players agreed on quickly was let's reseed because it works. It makes the playoffs better. It gives the higher seeds the best matchup, which is what they should have. They have earned that by merit of being the high seed. And I'm not saying that the Braves would have beaten the Diamondbacks. I'm not saying the Phillies would have beaten the Dodgers and it would have been Braves Phillies. But of the matchups we had, that's the one that should have been the NLCS. It just should have been. And I think over a 7-game series, you see a different series because it is a completely different strategy when you're playing 7 than it is when you're playing 5. The way you have to manage the pitchers is completely different. And again, I don't know if it would have changed the outcome. Nobody does. And if you played the series 100 times, you're going to get probably, again, pretty close to that 50-50 split because they are two very well-matched teams. But anyway, have we beaten the playoffs to death pretty significantly yet, or should we run it for a little while longer?
I think we're good.
All right. My wife's telling me to move on over here in the peanut gallery, so I guess we can do that. All right, so
I can't wait for when she gets to talk about the chop. Honestly,
yeah. If tonight wasn't going to run as long as it is, I was going to let her do it tonight. We will sneak it in. We'll do an episode after Thanksgiving and sneak it in at the end of November.
Oh yeah, after Thanksgiving because that's appropriate.
All right, let's do an episode next week. I'm fine with it.
No,
I'm sure she's already got her speech ready for me. Oh God. I thought you agreed to like a 3-minute board meeting length speech.
I use sources for those too, buddy.
Oh, it's gonna be
anyway. What's next? What's next?
Next up, we got the managerial hires. Joe, take it away, dude. You've been silent for a while, eating popcorn, watching this, watching the fireworks between Jason and I. It's time for the Cubbies to celebrate.
Hey, look, guys. Look, I mean, I thought I was having a great week already last week being away from cold Pennsylvania. But obviously this news dropped, I guess it was a Monday, I guess now, a week ago. And that was just, I'm like, wait, what? The Cubs did what? Obviously the council news is the big news right now. We'll see how some of these other manager jobs shake out. But if our listeners will remember when the season ended, I said either council will go to the Mets, or because that's where Stern was, or the Cubs need to make a move if he's available. To Milwaukee fans, don't be pissed at the Cubs. Be pissed at your ownership for not locking him up before his contract expired. Not my problem. Get over it. Look, a couple of comments on from Council's side of it and Rossi's side of it. When Council was talking to the Milwaukee media after the decision was made, he said, "Look, I was going through this process. It became clear I needed and wanted a new professional challenge." He said he's grateful for everything he's done in Milwaukee, but he just wanted to do something new, and he had a ton of thoughts on the future of the Cubs, which we've talked about a ton. Obviously, that there's a lot to be excited about, and he just wanted to do something different and experience a new challenge. Rossi, for his part, was interviewed a few days ago and said took the thankfulness approach, which is what you expect from David Ross. As much as obviously I like to give him a ton of grief. Stand up baseball dude. He said there was a lot of people who worked really hard alongside me. I'm really thankful for the 4 years I got, coming from zero coaching experience to getting the chance to manage such a great organization that has impacted my life in a great way. There's great people here. I really don't have a whole lot negative to say, to be honest. I get mad from time to time, but I have a lot to be thankful for. Again, did I expect anything less from David Ross? No. Again, great baseball human. So I'm not I don't begrudge him. I wish him the best of luck. Obviously, I have my differences of opinion with David Ross on many occasions, but I'm
every week this year.
I'm grateful for his contributions to the club, and obviously to the World Series team. And I wish him nothing but the best in his next endeavor, wherever that might be. He's turned down he turned down a bench coach opportunity. Says he's not really interested in that. I think it sounds like the Yankees offered that to him. And I think he's got some family concerns, so he's trying to stay somewhat either local to Chicago or somewhat where it's, he's earned a shot at a manager role somewhere else, I think. But the other thing you could look at with that is, okay, it's the Yankees. If Aaron Boone does what Aaron Boone does, you're kind of a lock for that job next year. So, I mean, there's a lot that could happen for him. And again, I wish him nothing but the best as he moves forward. Craig Counsell was introduced today. And, he says, he's excited for the future. He says it's time to be a Cub. Expect an obvious shirt with that on it very soon, I would imagine.
Tomorrow.
If not tonight. He said it feels close. It's a great place to be. He's a bit uncomfortable, obviously, with all the stuff that's been happening the last few weeks, but he's excited for the future there. He believes in the vision that Jed Hoyer sold him on for what the Cubs can do. The contract on this was crazy. 5 years, $40 million, highest paid manager in all of baseball. And I don't know what to think about that. If it impacts how much you spend this offseason on free agency, then we'll see how it all shakes out. But I mean, to make the big move, to make the necessary move, I can't help but be excited, man. Just can't help but be excited. But like I said at the start of the show with What Are You Drinking? Like, I'm excited about this, but what are you going to do in free agency?
Yeah, because the manager can only do so much. He has to pick the right 9 guys, but he still has to have the right 9 guys to pick to send out on the field. Looking at the Obvious Shirts website right now, of the new shirts, the only one that really mentions it right now is Take That Milwaukee, which I actually kind of love that one because that basically follows up my views on Milwaukee for many, 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 many years. Also, Joe, what do you think it's going to be like for Craig Counsell to finally coach a home game in Milwaukee after all these years?
Yeah, I mean, look, it'll be exciting for him, I think. Again, I'm really excited for what he can do. I wonder how the coaching staff's going to shake out. We'll probably find some of that out here in the next couple of days here. I kind of hope that um, Tommy Hotovy, the pitching coach, is kept on because he's been excellent. The pitching infrastructure in Chicago is absolutely phenomenal. So if that goes by the wayside along with all the Ross moves, then that's going to be a bit concerning for me.
Yeah.
And you have someone who should have been one of the Cy Young finalists. It's a good start.
Yeah.
You have a Gold Glove middle infield. You have a Gold Glove left fielder. There's so much to be excited about. You're not really sure what they're going to do with Belly, and Stroman is walking. So look, there's a lot to be excited about. There's a lot to be nervous about. Bring it on.
I do like, Joe, that now I'll at least understand what you mean when you say F Ross, that it's going to be about an actual player and not F David Ross because you're mad about something he did. So
I mean, if he's the manager of the Brewers, it could be.
I mean, that wouldn't that be something to see managers literally swap divisional teams without it being a trade made by the teams? That would be something. I don't see that, but it would be wild. Also, to the hooligans in David Ross's hometown that decided to go down to David Ross Field and write
Craig Counsell.
Or Craig, yeah, thank you,
Counsell,
not Ross. Yeah, to go down to Craig Counsell Field and write asshole on the sign because he left Milwaukee for Chicago. Just stop it. Stop it. Even if he wins a World Series with the Cubs, he will still be best known for his time as a player and as a manager in Milwaukee. So just stop. He will always be a Milwaukee guy through and through. There is nothing wrong with him taking an opportunity in Chicago.
And again, like ownership should have made more of an attempt to sign him.
If you wanted him back, why did you let him interview with the Mets?
Yeah, the thing that is kind of interesting for me is the price of the deal. That is going to be a game changer for managers moving forward. Can you imagine? This is for a guy who I don't want to say did nothing with the Brewers, but did not take them to the promised land or anything. Can you imagine what that's going to mean for the likes of, say Bruce Bochy looks for another deal? A World Series winning manager, that price is going to skyrocket.
How about and Bruce Bochy? That's a 4-time World Series winning manager.
Yeah. I mean, even like take even like say Snitker, say he falls off the wayside and the Braves decide to make a change. You have a multiple division winning, World Series winning manager. You can't expect to pay them the same as Craig Counsell, who did not do much except for maybe a division title or two. Like,
I was actually going to say that, but I'm worried about Snit's next extension because that next extension's price
even
is
looking at that
and it should go way up because if this is what we're going to give to a manager who has not won a World Series title, how about a guy who's won 6 straight divisions plus a World Series? Yeah, it's going to definitely throw the manager market all over the place. Now, that said, does that mean the Yankees can finally go to Aaron Boone and say, hey, you're getting a pay cut because if Craig Counsell gets $40 million for nothing, what are we paying you for? I'm sorry, that's not nice, Yankees fans, but it was funny, so I'm going to live with it.
But part of that is on Aaron Boone and part of that is on Brian Cashman. I mean, the fact that the Yankees haven't developed but 2 homegrown talents in the last 10 years is just garbage.
Yeah, straight up.
It's just garbage.
All right, other managerial hires. The Astros are going to bring on Joe Espada to replace Dusty Baker. Espada has been the Astros bench coach since 2018, a year after they won their tainted World Series over the Dodgers. He has previous coaching experience with both the Yankees and the Marlins. He played 9 years in the minors and the independent leagues. And from what reports I have read, he is well liked by the players in the clubhouse. And although Dusty doesn't get tossed nearly as much as he used to, notably in his days with Chicago, he does get tossed enough that Espada has had some spot managerial experience. So this is probably going to be a pretty seamless transition for the Astros. They're not a team that's going to have a ton of turnover, similar to Atlanta. Their core guys are locked up. It's just going to be some peripheral guys that they're going to maybe swap out over the offseason. So this is probably for the next maybe 2, maybe 3 years, this is probably going to be basically status quo. And then after that, we're going to really see what Espada can do once his core with Houston really starts to age out or leave in free agency. With the Guardians, this one I think was the most surprising of the managerial hires so far. Stephen Vogt, caught for many, many, many years in the majors. He's been he's literally been gone from one of the best catchers in the league to one of the worst catchers in the league over the course of his career. He's going to succeed Terry Francona, who in just a few short years became the winningest manager in club history. It's going to be his first coaching job at any level. Let's remember, he just retired at the end of the 2022 season with his kids announcing his last at bat when he was with Oakland, which, by the way, if you never heard that clip, go pull it up on YouTube. It's absolutely beautiful listening to his kids announce it. So, guys, what do you think of the Stephen Vogt hire? That's by far, I think, of all the hires that have been made, that one intrigues me the most. Joe, what do you think about? I'm going to ask you first because this is, again, a catcher just coming off of retirement, being put into a management role. The parallels are there to Ross. What do you think?
I mean, it's too early to say anything about that. I mean, I think it certainly helps him that there's a lot of talent and depth there. I think that's a big help for a young manager. I think, I think the fact that, Francona had a well-oiled machine there, and it's probably going to be, I'm sure he'll be there in some advisory role until he gets settled, or be willing to help sort of mentor him a little bit. And the other thing you have to consider is that the AL Central is a shit-ass division, so why not?
Yeah, I mean, they could have probably brought in me, and I could have probably figured out a way to get close to a division title. Jason, what are your thoughts?
I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. It's definitely an intriguing hire. I don't know that he's the one that I would have gone with, but I like to assume that the front office of the Guardians knows what they're doing and knows what they're looking for. So best of luck.
And then the Angels and the hiring that I was expecting but was really hoping wasn't going to happen. They stole Atlanta's third base coach, Ron Washington. It's going to be his first managerial job since 2014 when he resigned from his job with the Rangers. Career record of 664 and 611 with 2 World Series losses. Again, he's been Atlanta's third base coach for the last 7 seasons. Guys, Wash, everybody loves Wash. Not just Atlanta guys. Anywhere he has ever been as a coach or manager, his players love him. Not only is he hilarious, like he'll just walk up to a player, drop something funny, and he'll leave him with side stitches for a week laughing at what he said. But he uses great old school techniques with his defensive drills. Like Atlanta had some of the best defense I've ever seen them play in the infield under Wash because he is such a good teacher on how to be a good defender. He's going to be greatly missed for that. He's Joe, as you can definitely attest, Dansby Swanson would not be the defender he is today without the work of Ron Washington. He'll become the oldest manager in baseball at 71 years old, passing Brian Snitker and maybe Bochy, I think, who was also at the same age as Snit. Going to get a 2-year contract out of this. He'll be the second current black manager, joining Dave Roberts out in Los Angeles. 5th manager in 7 years for the Angels, who haven't won a playoff game since 2009. That said, I think he's taking the hardest job on of all of these manager roles, other than maybe the Mets, but I think his job's a little bit harder because, let's look at some of the ownership calls that Art Morenzo has made. He declined Phil Nevin's contract option in October, despite it not only being Nevin's first managing job, but his first full season as manager. Because remember, he was only interim at the end of the previous season. They made questionable decisions at the deadline. They kept Ohtani. They bought heavily. They stripped their farm system bare. And a deal like I said earlier when we were talking about the Rangers. At the time, what the Angels did looked great. And then every possible wheel on the wagon fell off to a very disappointing end of the year. And now they don't have any farm depth to pull from anymore. So, Wash has never shied away from a challenge. That's been his career as a player, as a manager. This might be one of the most challenging opportunities any manager will ever walk into. You've got one of the best players to have played the game in Mike Trout. They might get lucky and re-sign Ohtani. Who knows? Ohtani could go any number of places at this point. But they've had Ohtani and Trout together for 5 seasons now. I'm not sure how many. And they've gotten nothing out of it.
Mike Trout has never played in a playoff game.
That's insane.
And he's been in the league since 2012.
They never got a wild card bid even?
No, that's a crime. But it's also Trout's fault for staying there.
I would say he's the one that signed that big deal.
Yeah, he took the money.
I actually think that neither Ohtani nor Trout will be on that roster come opening day. I think Trout's going to be traded in this offseason.
Is he able to be traded? I thought he had a no-trade clause.
I would think that if he wants to win somewhere, he'll accept a trade to a contender.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He'd be stupid
He's
not
going to
to.
be coming home.
He does have a full no-trade clause in the current deal.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, as long as they look at trading him to a contender.
Here's going to be the problem. He has 7 years and $250 million left on that deal. If the Angels aren't willing to be like the Mets and eat a significant chunk of that money, I don't care how good he is. You're not going to find a lot of teams that are going to be willing to take on that contract, especially with his injury history over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just wild. Ron said Trout.
Oh, 2014?
2014. Okay. They must have been a wild. Okay. So they had a wild card bid, but still, yeah, that's just wild that they've had the best player in baseball since.
Okay. So 2012, and he gets to play in one playoff series. Like,
that's just wild. All right. And then the Mets also making a how should we put this, an interesting hire. Let's remember the Mets aren't really that old of a team, and Carlos Mendoza is going to be their 25th manager in their history. They're not that old. That's wild. 3-year contract with a club option for a 4th year. Let's see if he actually makes it past 2 years. I'll be surprised because the Mets lately have been doing much like the Angels have and have been cycling managers pretty rapidly. Mendoza was most recently the Yankees bench coach for the past 4 years. Previous managerial experience in the minors with both the Yankees and the Giants. So he does have some experience, at least as a manager. He is going to be the second full-time Venezuelan-born manager in Major League Baseball history. The first, of course, was the great Ozzie Guillen. and the many exciting times he had with the Chicago White Sox while he was the manager out there. And one fun note I personally said in the topic sheet, guys, he's already had dozens of opportunities managing a major league club because Aaron Boone gets himself tossed out of games so often. He's probably had at least a couple games worth of experience, so he's not going to be a complete novice at the MLB level as a manager. Does this, guys, this feels like the Mets are actually pretty serious when they said around the trade deadline, we're really looking at 2025 as the next time where we can reasonably expect to be competing for the NL East and or playoff and potentially beyond playoff aspirations. This hire really kind of feels like that to me. Are you guys getting that same vibe?
Absolutely.
Especially not getting counsel.
Honestly, there's a lot to. It feels like there's just too much unknown here. I don't know if, we don't know exactly what we're going to get there in New York. I think Counsell was a long shot because Counsell's got Midwest roots and he wanted to stay closer to home. So, I mean, that the fact that he didn't get picked up by the Mets has nothing to do with, whether the Mets wanted him or not. It's he'd rather stay closer to home, and I don't blame him. But I think, Boone seems to think that he certainly has earned the opportunity. If I'm him, I'm glad to be gone from Aaron Boone. Look, I mean, I don't. It's probably a little too soon to judge it. We'll kind of see what shakes out here. Obviously, the New York market wanted a huge hire, but I mean, the Phillies have done a lot with Rob Thompson, who was not a big name until he became the guy. So, I'd say let's see what they do. The Mets do in the offseason before we judge anything.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Joe.
See what they do with Alonso and all that.
All right, guys, so we're down to the last two openings that are left, San Diego and Milwaukee, because Milwaukee just lost their manager in Chicago. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll mention that as those guys get hired. I'm not going to speculate on who's going to get hired because it's really there's too many candidates. It's too deep of a pool to try and make guesses at this point. All right, so let's move it on to some of the awards. Obviously, awards are going to be given out throughout this week. Culminates Thursday night with MVP, if I remember right. I think that sounds right.
Somewhere around there, either Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay. So we have Silver Sluggers for the American League. You've got Yandy Diaz at first from Tampa, Marcus Semien from Texas at second, Rafael Devers from Boston at third, Corey Seager from Texas at short, catcher was Adley Rutschman from Baltimore, outfield. Because remember, Silver Slugger, they just take three outfielders instead of positions. Kyle Tucker from the Astros, Julio Rodriguez from Seattle, Luis Robert Jr. from the White Sox, DH went to Shohei Ohtani from Anaheim, utility went to Gunnar Henderson from Baltimore, and for the first time we had the team award given out, and that went to the Rangers. The Rangers, they led the AL in runs scored, hits, homers, RBIs, batting average, slugging, OPS. So that was really, I don't think there wasn't really a close second place choice for the American League team Silver Slugger. I think that's pretty cool that they're doing a team Silver Slugger. That's very interesting that we see that now. I kind of like it.
Figure you lose the pitching aspect of it, so it kind of fills in that gap.
Yeah, because the utility was never intended to replace the pitcher. It was intended to reward the guys that can literally be thrown anywhere in the lineup and play at least adequately or better. So, yeah, that's a good point, Jason. I like that. Guys, any arguments to the AL? I think they pretty much nailed the AL up and down. I just want to say the fact that J-Rod, after a really horrendous start to the season, turned it on so much in the second half and damn near carried Seattle back to the playoffs on his back to earn a Silver Slugger. It says a lot about the guy to go from extremes like that.
He seems like he must just be a slow starter because he started slow last year and wound up dominating for Rookie of the Year. So he may just be a slow starter, which, I mean, you figure You only have your spring training games. You're coming back from the off season, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Joe, any arguments from you for AL? I thought AL was actually almost perfect.
This list was spot on. There wasn't anything to really be disappointed with here.
In the NL, first base Matt Olson of the Braves, second base Luis Arias of the Marlins. By the way, guys, Arias, it's 2 years in a row, and he did it in 2 separate leagues. So I don't think that's happened very often, maybe even ever. So congratulations, especially Arias, for that. Third base Austin Riley of the Braves, shortstop Francisco Lindor of the Mets. That one surprised me a little, I'm not going to lie. Catcher William Contreras of the Brewers. Awesome to see that. I'm never not going to love William. Outfield Acuna of the Braves, Mookie of the Dodgers, and Juan Soto of the Padres. DH Bryce Harper of the Phillies. Utility Cody Bellinger of the Cubs. And the team went to the Braves. They led the NL runs, hits, homers, RBIs, batting slug, OPS, franchise record and home runs and all that. Again, I don't really think in the team, just like the AL, I don't think there really was a legitimate threat for a second team there this year. Guys, NL by and large, not too many arguments. DH, I don't really think of Harper as the DH for the Phillies. I did look it up later, Jason. I know he did play more games at DH than Schwarber, so it's probably why his eligibility was there.
Well, I mean, look at it as you can, if you want to play that game, like Cody Bellinger was primarily in the outfield, wasn't he, Joe?
He was back and forth between center and first.
Okay.
After things at first base fell apart and Mike Tauchman rose to the occasion, he played between the two places.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Belly was a pretty legit utility pick. If it wasn't going to be Belly, I thought it was going to be Tommy Pham, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, and Harper only started playing first base in like July or August. So.
Yeah, I thought he started sooner than that too. But anyway,
I had his stats pulled up just in case you decided to argue it.
I would argue Ozuna. I'm not going to get into it. I think we've had enough Braves Phillies arguments for tonight. I think Ozuna also makes a very compelling case. It's you compare the stat lines between the two. It's pretty close to half splits from, I sent you the screenshot of comparing Ozuna and Harper as well as our 2 NL All-Star picks for Cy Young. And Soler also made a decent case, although I don't think his case was as strong as Ozuna's. Again, I just don't feel like Harper was DH, but looking at the number of games played, I guess he was their primary DH for more of the season.
Yeah.
But that said, that was, anyway. 16 teams were representing the Silver Sluggers this year. I don't know if that's a high, but it's got to be pretty close to that. The only multiple winners were from Atlanta, Baltimore, and Texas. So very, very spread out this year, which I think was good to see. Moving on to the Golden Gloves, AL, you've got first base Nathaniel Lowe of Texas, Andres Jimenez of Cleveland at second. That one didn't surprise me in the slightest. Matt Chapman at third from Toronto. Anthony Volpe from New York at shortstop. Also became the first rookie shortstop to win in at least 30 years. It's been a very long time since you saw a shortstop rookie win that. Catcher Jonah Heim from Texas. Again, no surprise to anybody, especially if you watch the World Series. Jonah Heim is incredible. Pitcher was Jose Barrios of Toronto. The outfielders, which should just be the 3 best outfielders because outfielders move around too much, but we don't do that for the Golden Gloves. Left field, Steve Kwan of Cleveland. Center fielder, Kevin Kiermaier of Toronto. Right fielder, Adolis Garcia of Texas. Utility went to Mauricio Dubon of Houston. I didn't really have too many arguments with the AL. Granted, I don't watch the AL nearly as much. I gotta say, guys, the biggest argument I would have had is if they put any catcher in there besides Jonah Heim, because holy crap, he's incredible.
And then who was the Platinum Glove winner for the American League?
Platinum Glove for the American League this year is Andres Jimenez. Again, Jimenez is the best second baseman in the game with a glove. No question in my mind. So I was not shocked to see that. Looking at the NL, first base, Christian Walker of the Diamondbacks. Second base, Nico Horner of the Cubs. Third base, Brian Hayes of the Pirates. Shortstop, Dansby Swanson of the Cubs. By the way, this is the first time you have had the double play combination win a Golden Glove together since 2018 with the Angels when it was Andrelton Simmons and Ian Kinsler. Fun fact.
Those are some names.
Yeah, right. I miss him.
Man.
He was with Atlanta. He was so smooth at shortstop.
That's a throwback.
Yeah. Here's to Simba, man. Catcher went to Gabriel Moreno of Arizona. Pitcher went to Zach Wheeler of Philadelphia. Left fielder Ian Happ of the Cubbies. Center fielder Brenton Doyle of the Rockies. Right fielder Fernando Tatis Jr. of the freaking Padres. Utility Haesung Kim of the Padres. Platinum glove went to Fernando Tatis. Okay. I'm sorry. Why was Tatis? No, you're going to ignore Castellanos from Philadelphia, who didn't commit an error. The only player in the outfield of any league that was qualified who didn't commit an error. You're going to ignore Ronald Acuna of the Braves, who threw out runners with regularity out of right field with a cannon for an arm. For Fernando freaking Tatis.
And I would like to point out that Castellanos is the only player in MLB, I believe, not just the outfield, but period, that did not have an error the entire season.
Well, that's because Schwarber made like 6 times the number of errors in left field to make up for it.
We're not talking about Schwarber. He's not on this list.
The day Kyle Schwarber is nominated for a Gold Glove is the day baseball has officially collapsed in on itself and is about to die. Because, good God, that was wow.
Yeah, I'll let you two give your thoughts on it. But there's 2 things here that are not sitting the best with me. And I'll get to those in a moment.
I'm just going to say it. Castellanos got robbed. The fact that neither Castellanos nor Acuna were even finalists, if I remember right, which makes so this goes back to what me and Ron were saying in that episode we did before the World Series when we had the finalist list. The fact that Mookie is listed in the outfield and is listed as utility, you got to make up your mind with these guys. You can't be eligible for both. If you're eligible for utility, you're utility. Otherwise, you're outfield. Because I feel like Mookie being out there took either Castellanos or Acuna off the finalist list. And neither of them should have been off that finalist list, frankly. But Jason, I think this is a rare time when you and I are both going to agree that we got screwed.
Yeah. Like, I don't know that I would have said Castellanos should have won it, but he should have been a finalist.
Yeah, he should have been a finalist. Both of them should have been. The guy from Washington, I can't remember his name. Was it Thompson or Thomas or whatever? Lane Thompson, maybe? Lane Thomas. The fact that he was one of the finalists over both Acuna and Castellanos, just wow.
Yeah.
Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's not too much to disagree with here. I do think that Nico's case was made a little stronger based on the fact that Dansby was there. Not that they do it on purpose that way, but I think Nico's numbers were maybe boosted, or his vote totals were boosted by the fact that he's playing with the best shortstop in the National League. The fact that, like you said, the fact that Castellanos and Acuna weren't even finalists for this is just garbage to me. The fact that MLB would let Tatis be eligible for this is just stupid. I'm sorry.
And the dude was given the platinum glove.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that he was even eligible for this award when he didn't play most of a half of the season is just pathetic to me. And if you're going to be a stain on the game, if you're going to be a stain on the team that you play for, and you're going to be in general, pain in the ass, you don't get to be eligible for this crap. This is pathetic. You want to grow the game. You want to improve the image of the sport. This doesn't do that. It doesn't. And again, agree with you, Andrew. You're either one or the other. you're either a second baseman, a right fielder, or a utility. Like let's just settle that crap. You're only eligible in one of the categories because Mookie being there, like you said, it totally jobs Castellanos, who didn't have an error the entire year. It's ridiculous.
Like, I'm sorry, a guy that doesn't have an error for an entire year. I know outfielders don't get as many opportunities to make errors. I understand that. But the fact that he was the only eligible player to not have an error, whether it was outfield or all eligible fielders, it doesn't matter.
The guy didn't commit an error.
What the hell? Like, that's how is that not worthy of a Golden Glove? And I know they're looking at the problem I have with Golden Glove too is it's either we're going to look at all the advanced stats and ignore the basic stats, or we're going to look at all the basic stats and ignore the advanced stats. Nobody has figured out a good way to take a good look at both. And I think that's why Castellanos got screwed, because I think the reason Tatis got it for right field was because he has a cannon for an arm, which we knew that because he used to be a really good shortstop too. You know, they're looking at the advance stuff. They're looking at his arm strength. They're looking at the pop time. They're looking at how quick he gets the ball out of his glove, but they're not looking at the whole picture. And they need to pick. Are you going to look at basic, or are you going to look at advanced? Or, in my opinion, look at all of it. And they're not doing that. And I've thought that for the last couple of years. The fact that Murphy didn't even make it as a finalist in the NL at catcher shocked me, because I can tell you there's a difference in how defensive games are played when Murphy is behind the dish versus d'Arnaud, because his pop time is better. His arm is stronger. He is more accurate. He is one of the best defensive catchers that's why Atlanta went and got him in the offseason. And like even JT, who had a down year by his standards, which is still better than most catchers are ever going to have because he's that good of a defensive catcher. I don't think, did JT even make it as a finalist this year?
He did.
Okay.
Yeah,
least,
it would.
okay,
I forget who the third one was, because I know it was Moreno, JT. I forget who the third one was.
But still, that drives me nuts. One, I was actually happy. I was happy to see Brenton Doyle get it. Michael Harris and Brenton Doyle are going to be fighting for the center fielder Golden Glove for probably the next until they retire, because the two of them are virtually identical. Speed guys, great eyes, great gloves, great arms. So that's going to be an exciting battle to watch out in center field, because, again, Golden Glove just takes by position instead of the best outfielders, which they should, because outfielders switch so much. I feel like I had this argument last year too. Anyway, so yeah. All right. Are we going to rant on Tatis anymore? Or are you guys pretty good with the Golden Gloves?
I have two things that kind of bothered me with this list. The first one is since we were already on the Tatis train, him getting the Platinum Glove, I believe that was voted on by fans.
That's
I believe,
yeah,
which is also trash. But to me, the Platinum Glove should have gone to Cabrian Hayes or even Dansby. And my other problem with this list, sorry, Joe, Nico Horner should not have gotten Gold Glove over Bryson Stott.
I could see the point.
And for this argument, I decided to just kind of do some digging and get some stats for you. Because where'd it go? Come back here. Okay. So let's take a look here. So Nico and Bryson both played 149 games. Bryson Stott committed 3 errors. Nico committed 9. Bryson had a fielding percentage of 992. Nico had a fielding percentage of 987. Bryson Stott was worth 17 outs above replacement when the league average is only 13. And Nico was at the average, 13 outs above average. Bryson prevented 13 runs on the season, while Nico only prevented 10 runs. To me, the stats are there that honestly, Bryson got absolutely robbed of the Golden Glove this year.
I could certainly see that. I don't disagree with the numbers.
Yeah.
Like I said before we started talking, I think playing alongside Dansby probably
Yeah.
boosted his profile a little bit. I honestly, my biggest issue with the whole Nico thing is that the fact he wasn't a finalist last year was just pathetic.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, like with
But
with the stats this year, like comparing the two players, that Gold Glove should have been Bryson Stott's.
And
Good for Nico, but Stott was definitely robbed of it, I think.
And something else to consider too, the Golden Glove has completely changed for the middle infielders because of the shift rules. Because before this year, when you had guys that were shifting over and doing all sorts of crazy things, I know I'm gonna look at Ozzy for an instance, because Ozzy was known for playing 20 to 40 feet out into the outfield, because Ozzy is short, man. That dude's tiny. When he's stuck on the edge of the dirt, there were a lot of line drives that he could not get this year that in years past he would snag. We're all, in addition to, we don't know what set of stats we're going to look at, we also need to acknowledge the fact that baseball one of the things they wanted to change with these shift rules was we wanted to see the more athletic defenders. Are we really seeing more athletic defenders, or are we taking away opportunities from others? Because Ozzy's not the only guy who got affected by this. I just know it because I see him all the time, and he's one of the shortest second basemen in the league. I said it in the preseason. If you're going to get rid of the shift, let the infielders go into the outfield if they want to take that chance, because it is a chance. Because if it's not a line drive shot and you're playing 10 feet into the grass, you're probably not going to be able to charge in time to be able to make the throw. So you're still going to have give and take. So it's just interesting to me, looking from a guy who didn't have a guy in the race here, that the battle for this award is so different this year than it was last year, that's one rule change that we were expecting an impact, but I think it made more of an impact than a lot of people realize just at a quick glance. All right, let's move it on, guys. Rookie of the Year was announced earlier tonight. We had unanimous choices to absolutely nobody's surprise, nor the surprise of the odds makers in Vegas, who had this set at plus 3,000 or higher for the last.
It was like 7,000 or higher. Like, I think the Ohtani for MVP was like 10,000 or something like that. But they were like ridiculous.
So AL, Gunnar Henderson of the Orioles, 255, 325, 489 slash line, 28 homers, 82 RBIs, 100 run scores, 10 stolen bases, a 6.2 WAR that is using the baseball reference method. And I went to Corbin Carroll of the Diamondbacks, 285, 362, 506, 25 homers, 76 RBIs, 116 runs scored, 10 triples, which led, I believe, all of baseball, actually, not just the NL. I think that led all of baseball. 54 stolen bases, a 5.4 WAR, again, using the baseball reference method. Guys, this is only the fifth time that both leagues' winners were unanimous choices. The last time that happened was 2017, when it was Aaron Judge and Cody Bellinger. And one thing to remember, both the Orioles and the Diamondbacks are going to get an extra first-round pick in the 2024 draft as part of the prospect promotion incentive, because they were both ranked among the top 100 and started the season in the majors. So, win-wins all the way around. Again, no surprises whatsoever for either of those awards. The second-place guys were so far behind, choking on dust, it wasn't even funny and not even worth mentioning. All right, one more thing I'm going to quick mention before we wrap it up for tonight. Oakland's mayor is not giving up on keeping the athletics in Oakland. Mayor Shane Tao sent a letter to 15 owners in baseball outlining why they should reject the A's owner John Fisher's attempts to move the team to Las Vegas after 55 years in Oakland. That meeting is going to take place this week in Arlington. The relocation vote is expected to be held during this current session. Approval of 3/4 of the 30 owners is required to allow relocation. we haven't had a team relocate since 2004 when the Expos moved to Washington and renamed themselves the Nationals. So it has been quite a while. The letter basically is going to reiterate a lot of the points that Tao has been making since April. I'm not going to go through all those. We've beaten them to death in the show many, many times. That's one thing I do want to point out, though. Oakland has apparently procured $428 million in public funding for offsite infrastructure, and that's in addition to the approximately $500 million in onsite infrastructure that the city and county would contribute. So not only is Oakland getting actually less money from Las Vegas to move than they would have gotten from Oakland, it's guys. He sent this letter to a mix of large and medium market teams, including the Yankees, Red Sox, and Dodgers for large. Smaller include the Tigers, Rockies, Mariners. I would love to see this work and force the Athletics to stay in Oakland. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's a great last-ditch effort, but I think we're at ball game over for that.
Yeah.
So, hey, if it works, great, and maybe it'll help some team in the future. Whether it works or not, we're not going to know. But yeah, I don't see it happening. All right, guys. Anything else you guys want to toss out before we wrap it up for tonight?
Nope, I don't think so.
All right. To our fans that stayed with us the whole way through, or to those listening on recording that make it the entire way through, I know it was a long one. Thanks for sticking with us. Again, sorry we were not able to get anything in between any of the rounds. We actually tried. We did. Between Jason's incredibly hectic schedule that has been a thing for this year, and just me and Joe and Ron also all having personal stuff pop up at random times. Sorry we couldn't do anything in between the rounds. It really wasn't deliberate. It just, that's how it happened to fall this year.
The rounds were in weird positions too. Like there were games on Monday nights. Like if it was between chatting with you boys and watching the Phillies play, sorry, I'm going to take the Phils.
In the playoffs. Nobody can ever blame anybody for doing that.
But yeah, we were getting playoff games on Monday nights, so I know we would all much rather watch the games than chat about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, maybe next year all three teams will be in, so we really won't want to be chatting. We'll want to be watching and maybe talking trash in the group chat. You never know. All right, guys. Audio recordings are available on Anchor, Spotify, Breaker, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, and pretty much anywhere you can find the podcast. See us live on YouTube, Facebook Live, as well as Twitter. Merchandise is at redbubble.com. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/dollardogsandbeer. Twitter's at DDAB_podcast. All three of us are still on there. I'm at PyroLord314. Jason's at JRicker300. Joe's at JoltonJoe35. We are presented by Dark Arrow Podcast, LLC, and sponsored by the phenomenal Whiskey and Blade Barbershop in Lidditz. Yes, Johnny is finally going to get my horrible mane of a hair and beard cut next Monday. It's long overdue. Can't wait to talk to you, Johnny. Guys, may your dogs always cost $1. May your beer always be cold. We'll see you in the next episode.